The email glowed on my screen. A single line that shattered my world. I can't wait to see you again. My love, same hotel. Friday. My hands trembled as I stared at the sender's name, Evelyn Cartero, woman I'd never met, but whose words now carved a hole in my chest. I, Claire Monroe, 35 years old, mother of 2, and wife of 12 years, felt the ground dissolve beneath me. It was 2 a.m., and the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. James, my husband, slept soundly upstairs, oblivious to the bomb ticking in my inbox. I'd only opened his laptop to check a recipe for tomorrow's dinner, but curiosity led me to his email, a decision I'd both curse and thank myself for. The affair had been going on for months, hidden in plain sight behind late nights at the office and business trips. Each message I read was a dagger, stolen weekends, whispered promises, and plans for a future that didn't include me or our children. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, a cold, unfamiliar rage settled in my bones. I printed every email, every damning word, until the printer ran out of ink. By dawn, I had a stack of evidence and a plan. But I wasn't alone in this betrayal. Evelyn Carter wasn't just some stranger, she was married to. Her husband, Richard, deserved to know. What we did next would unravel both our spouses' lies and set us free in ways they'd never see coming. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, the emails hidden in a folder under a pile of cookbooks. James shuffled in, his tie loose, muttering about a big meeting. He kissed my forehead, a gesture that now felt like a lie, and left for work. I waited until the kids, Emma, 10, and Liam, 7, were at school before I made the call. Finding Richard Carter was easy. His name was in one of Evelyn's emails, and a quick search led me to his office number. Mr. Carter, this is Claire Monroe. We need to talk about our spouses. My voice was steady, but my heart raced. There was a long pause before he agreed to meet me at a cafe downtown. I could hear the confusion in his voice, but also a flicker of suspicion. He knew something was wrong. At the cafe, Richard was already there, a tall man with graying temples and tired eyes. He looked like someone who'd been carrying a weight he couldn't name. I slid the folder across the table without preamble. Read these, I said. His face paled as he scanned the pages, his jaw tightening with every line. How long have you known? He asked, his voice low. Since last night, I replied. But I'm guessing you've suspected something for a while. He nodded, admitting Evelyn's late nights and vague excuses had raised red flags. We sat in silence, 2 strangers bound by shared betrayal. Then Richard leaned forward, his eyes sharp. What do you want to do about this, Claire? I took a deep breath. I want them to feel the consequences. Not just emotionally, financially, socially, everything. I want us to come out stronger, and I want them to regret ever thinking they could get away with it. Richard's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I'm in, he said. We spent the next hour plotting. Richard was a lawyer, meticulous and strategic, with a knack for finding leverage. I was a graphic designer, creative and relentless when I set my mind to something. Together, we were a force. Our plan wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake, it was about justice, about reclaiming our lives. Step 1, gather more evidence. Step 2, protect our assets. Step 3, expose them in a way that would leave no room for excuses. That week, I became a detective in my own home. I installed a tracking app on James's phone, justifying it as a necessary evil. It led me to the hotel where he and Evelyn met, a sleek downtown spot far too expensive for casual drinks. I hired a private investigator with savings I'd squirreled away, and within days, I had photos, James and Evelyn, arm in arm, laughing as they entered the hotel. The images burned, but they also fueled me. Richard, meanwhile, dug into Evelyn's finances. As her husband, He had access to their joint accounts and discovered she'd been funneling money into a secret account likely for her and James's future. He froze the account, citing suspicious activity, and alerted their bank to potential fraud. Evelyn wouldn't know until it was too late. We met again, this time at Richard's office, to refine our strategy. They think they're untouchable, he said, spreading documents across his desk. But they've underestimated us. I nodded, feeling a spark of hope for the first time in days. We weren't just victims. We were architects of our own redemption. By the end of the week, we had a plan to confront them, but not before securing our own futures. I consulted a divorce attorney, quietly transferring my share of our joint savings into a new account. Richard did the same, ensuring Evelyn couldn't drain their funds. We agreed to confront our spouses simultaneously, in public, where their lies would have nowhere to hide. The day of the confrontation arrived, a crisp Saturday morning. James thought I was taking the kids to soccer practice, but instead, I'd arranged for them to stay with my sister. Richard and I had chosen the hotel's upscale restaurant as the stage. We knew James and Evelyn were meeting there for lunch, based on their latest email exchange. I dressed carefully black blazer, white blouse, my hair pulled back to show the steel in my eyes. Richard wore a tailored suit, his calm demeanor masking the storm within. We walked in together, the folder of emails in my hand, the PI's photos in Richard's briefcase. The hostess led us to their table, where James and Evelyn sat, laughing over wine. The moment James saw me, his glass slipped, spilling red across the tablecloth. Evelyn froze, her eyes darting to Richard. "Claire," what James started, but I cut him off, dropping the folder onto the table. "Read it," I said, my voice ice cold. Richard stepped forward, placing the photos beside the folder. "You both have some explaining to do." The restaurant went quiet, all eyes on us. Evelyn's face flushed, but she tried to play it off. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered. James, however, was silent, his eyes fixed on the photos. The truth was undeniable. "We know everything," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. "And we're done being your fools." Richard's gaze was unyielding as he addressed Evelyn. "You've been lying to me for months. It ends now." The confrontation was just the beginning. What followed would turn their world upside down and set Richard and me free in ways we never imagined. The restaurant's silence was deafening, broken only by the clink of a fork dropping somewhere in the background. James's face was a mask of shock, his usual charm replaced by a sickly pallor. Evelyn's hands shook as she reached for the photos, her eyes scanning the images of her and James in compromising moments. I stood tall, my heart pounding, but my resolve unshaken. Richard's presence beside me was a steady anchor, his calm fury mirroring my own. "You thought you could build a life on lies," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. "You thought I wouldn't find out." James opened his mouth, but no words came. Evelyn, however, found her voice, her tone sharp and defensive. "Claire, you don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." Richard laughed, a bitter sound that made her flinch. "It's exactly what it looks like. Evelyn, you've been siphoning money from our accounts, planning your little escape with him." He gestured to James, who looked like he wanted to disappear. "But you didn't count on us working together." The other diners watched, some whispering, others pretending not to stare. I didn't care. This wasn't about public humiliation, it was about truth. I leaned forward, locking eyes with James. "You've betrayed me, our kids, our life, and now you'll face the consequences." We left them at the table, the folder and photos a damning centerpiece. Outside, the autumn air was crisp, and I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Richard walked me to my car, his expression unreadable. "What now?" he asked. "Now we protect ourselves," I said, "and we make sure they can't hurt us anymore." We parted ways, but not before exchanging numbers. This was far from over. Back home, I moved with purpose. I packed a bag for myself and the kids, knowing we couldn't stay in a house tainted by James's lies. My sister, Lisa, welcomed us without question, her guest room a temporary sanctuary. Emma and Liam sensed something was wrong, but I shielded them from the details, promising everything would be okay. It was a promise I intended to keep. That night, I met with my divorce attorney, Sarah, a sharp woman with a reputation for winning tough cases. I laid out everything, the emails, the photos, James's lies. Sarah's eyes gleamed as she reviewed the evidence. "This is airtight," she said. "He won't have a leg to stand on. And with Richard's cooperation, we can hit them both where it hurts." The plan was simple but devastating. James and I owned a small marketing firm together, a business we'd built from scratch. He handled clients. I designed campaigns. The company was our biggest asset, and I wasn't about to let him walk away with it. Sarah suggested a bold move. I'd file for divorce, citing infidelity, and demand full control of the business as part of the settlement. The evidence would ensure James couldn't contest it without exposing his affair to the world. Meanwhile, Richard was working his own angle. As a lawyer, he knew how to play hardball. He'd already frozen Evelyn's secret account, but now he went further, alerting their mutual friends and colleagues to her financial misconduct. Word spread quickly, and Evelyn's reputation as a respected real estate agent began to crumble. Clients canceled meetings, and her social circle shrank overnight. Richard and I met daily, coordinating our efforts. We weren't just dismantling our spouse's lies. We were building a partnership of mutual survival. I've hired a forensic accountant, he told me over coffee one morning. They're digging into James's finances, too. If he's been hiding money, we'll find it. The accountant uncovered a gold mine. James had been diverting company funds into a separate account, likely to fund his affair or a potential escape with Evelyn. The discovery gave me leverage I hadn't expected. Sarah filed a motion to freeze the company's accounts, citing mismanagement. James was blindsided, unable to access the funds he thought were his. Days turned into weeks, and the pressure on James and Evelyn mounted. I stayed focused, balancing my role as a mother with my mission to reclaim my life. Emma and Liam asked about their father, and I answered carefully, saying he was working through some things. The truth would come later, when they were ready. One evening, Richard called with news. "Evelyn's cracking," he said. She called me, begging to talk. She's scared of losing everything. I felt a pang of sympathy, but it was fleeting. Evelyn had chosen this path, just as James had. "Let her sweat," I said. "We're not done yet." Our next move was riskier but necessary. Richard and I decided to go public, not with a spectacle, but with precision. We drafted a joint statement, carefully worded to expose the affair without naming names directly. Richard sent it to their professional networks. I shared it with our company's clients, framing it as a restructuring due to personal misconduct. The fallout was immediate. James's clients dropped him, and Evelyn's deals collapsed. Their carefully curated lives were unraveling, thread by thread. By the end of the month, I felt a shift. The rage that had fueled me was giving way to something else: hope. I was taking back control, not just of my marriage, but of my future. Richard and I weren't friends, exactly, but we were allies, bound by a shared wound and a shared goal. "We're almost there," he said during one of our late-night strategy sessions. "They're cornered." He was right. James called me the next day, his voice shaking. "Claire, can we talk? Please." I agreed, but on my terms. The meeting would be at Sarah's office, with her present. I wasn't about to let him manipulate me again. When the day came, I was ready. James walked in, looking like a man who'd lost everything because he had. The question was, what would he do next? And how far was I willing to go to ensure my freedom? James sat across from me in Sarah's office. His eyes bloodshot and his suit wrinkled. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms with a charming smile now looked like a stranger, diminished by his own choices. I clutched the armrests of my chair, steeling myself against the flicker of pity in my chest. "Claire, I'm sorry," he began, his voice hoarse. "I never meant to hurt you." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her pen poised over her notepad. I didn't respond, letting his words hang in the air like smoke. He leaned forward, desperate. "Can we fix this? For the kids?" The mention of Emma and Liam sent a jolt through me, but not the kind he'd hoped for. "You don't get to use them as a shield," I said, my voice low and steady. "You betrayed us all, James. And now you'll face the consequences." Sarah slid a document across the table: divorce papers, with terms that favored me heavily: full custody of the kids, control of the company, and a hefty alimony to ensure my financial stability. James's eyes widened as he read, his hands trembling. "This will ruin me," he whispered. "You ruined yourself," I replied. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to the war I was waging. I drove to Lisa's house, where Emma and Liam were playing in the backyard. Their laughter was a reminder of what I was fighting for. I joined them, forcing a smile, but my mind was on the next step. Richard had texted earlier, Evelyn's meeting with her lawyer. "She's trying to salvage her career." I replied, "Let's make sure she can't." Our public statement had done its job, but we needed to tighten the screws. Richard suggested leaking the financial misconduct to a local business journal. Anonymously, of course. The article would focus on ethical breaches in our respective industries, hinting at James and Evelyn's affair without directly naming them. It was a calculated move, one that would cement their professional downfall. I hesitated. This felt like crossing a line. But Richard's logic was sound. They didn't hesitate to betray us. Why should we hold back? I agreed, and he sent the tip. The article ran 2 days later, a scathing piece that sent shockwaves through our community. James's clients dropped him entirely, and Evelyn's real estate firm put her on indefinite leave. At home, I focused on the kids. Emma, ever perceptive, asked why Daddy wasn't around. I knelt beside her, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and they need time to figure things out. But I'm here, and I'll always be here. She hugged me, her small arms a lifeline. Liam, less aware, just asked for extra cookies. I gave him 2, grateful for his innocence. Richard and I met again, this time at a park to avoid prying eyes. He looked lighter, as if exposing Evelyn had lifted a weight. "She's begging for a second chance," he said, tossing a pebble into the pond. "But I'm done. I filed for divorce yesterday." I nodded, proud of his resolve. "I signed mine today. Sarah says it's a strong case, especially with the financial evidence." We sat in companionable silence, watching the water ripple. For the first time, I felt a spark of something new: freedom. Maybe, or the promise of it. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings and parenting duties. Sarah worked tirelessly, ensuring James couldn't wiggle out of the divorce terms. The forensic accountant's report was damning. James had siphoned nearly $50,000 from our company, likely to fund his affair. Sarah used this to argue for a larger settlement, including a portion of his personal investments. James, cornered, had no choice but to agree. Evelyn, meanwhile, was unraveling. Richard shared that she'd tried to confront him at his office, tearfully claiming she'd been manipulated by James. He didn't buy it, and neither did I. Her desperation only strengthened our resolve. We coordinated with our lawyers to ensure both divorces moved forward swiftly, with terms that protected our assets and our futures. One evening, as I tucked the kids into bed, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from James. His voice was slurred, broken. "Claire, I've lost everything. I'm sorry. I just..." I need to see the kids. I deleted the message, my heart hardening. He'd see them, but on my terms, through supervised visits. I wasn't cruel, but I wasn't foolish either. Richard called later, his voice steady. The article's impact is bigger than we expected. Evelyn's firm is under investigation for her financial dealings. I felt a twinge of satisfaction, but also exhaustion. This wasn't about gloating. It was about survival. What about you? I asked. How are you holding up? Better than I thought, he said. I'm starting to see a life beyond this mess. His words echoed my own thoughts. The pain was still there, but so was the possibility of something better. As the divorce proceedings neared their end, I began to rebuild. I took over the marketing firm, rebranding it under my name. Clients who'd left because of James's scandal slowly returned, impressed by my transparency and determination. I hired a new team, including a young designer whose energy reminded me of my younger self. The business wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Richard, too, was moving forward. He'd taken a sabbatical to focus on himself, even talking about starting his own law practice. We met less frequently, our mission nearly complete, but our bond remained. We'd been through a war together, and that kind of alliance doesn't fade easily. James and Evelyn, meanwhile, were shadows of their former selves. The article had done its job, and their social and professional circles had all but abandoned them. I didn't revel in their downfall, but I didn't mourn it either. They'd made their choices, and now they lived with them. The final piece of my plan was about to fall into place, a move that would secure my freedom in a way James would never expect. The courtroom was cold, the kind of sterile chill that seeps into your bones. I sat beside Sarah, my divorce attorney, as James took his place across the room, his lawyer whispering frantically in his ear. He looked like a man who'd aged a decade in months. His once confident posture slumped. I didn't meet his eyes. Today wasn't about him, it was about me, Emma, Liam, and the life we deserved. Sarah presented our case with surgical precision, the emails, the photos, the financial misconduct. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, listened intently, her pen scratching notes. When James's lawyer tried to spin a tale of miscommunication, Sarah countered with the forensic accountant's report, detailing the $50,000 James had siphoned from our company. The judge's expression hardened, and I knew we'd won. The settlement was finalized that afternoon, full custody of the kids, control of the marketing firm, and alimony that would keep us comfortable for years. James's face was ashen as he signed the papers, his dreams of a cushy future with Evelyn in tatters. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter, as if I'd shed a weight I'd carried for years. Back at Lisa's, I celebrated quietly with a glass of wine and a call to Richard. It's done, I told him, my voice steady but tinged with relief. The judge ruled in my favor. He congratulated me, his own divorce hearing scheduled for the following week. Evelyn's lawyer is scrambling, he said. She's got nothing to stand on. We talked about our next steps, not as conspirators now, but as people reclaiming their lives. I'd already started redecorating the house we'd moved back into, erasing traces of James. The kids' rooms were bright with new colors, and I'd turned the guest room into a studio for my design work. Emma and Liam were adjusting, their resilience a quiet miracle. They asked about their father less often, and I was grateful for their ability to move forward. The marketing firm was my lifeline. I poured myself into it, rebranding it as Monroe Creative. The name felt like a declaration of independence. I reached out to old clients, offering transparency about the restructuring and promising a fresh vision. To my surprise, many returned, drawn by my honesty and the quality of my work. I hired a small team, including Mia, a 24-year-old designer with a bold streak that pushed me to take risks. Our first campaign sleek ad for a local nonprofit went viral, and suddenly, Monroe Creative was the talk of the town. But the real victory was still to come. During the divorce proceedings, Sarah had uncovered an offshore account James had hidden, containing nearly $200. 000. He'd thought it was untouchable, a safety net for his new life with Evelyn. Sarah, however, was relentless, working with the accountant to trace the funds back to our company's earnings. The judge ordered the account seized and awarded it to me as part of the settlement. I didn't tell James. He'd find out soon enough, when his secret funds vanished. The money wasn't just a windfall, it was my freedom, a chance to start over without depending on anyone. I opened a trust fund for Emma and Liam, ensuring their college educations were secure. The rest I invested in the business, hiring more staff and expanding our reach. Monroe Creative wasn't just surviving. It was thriving, and I was at its helm. Richard's divorce went as smoothly as mine. Evelyn, desperate to save face, agreed to a settlement that left her with little. Her career in real estate was in ruins, her clients gone, and her social circle non-existent. Richard, ever the strategist, had protected his assets early, leaving her no leverage. He called me after the hearing, his voice lighter than I'd ever heard. "I'm free," he said simply. We met for coffee, a ritual that had become our way of checking in. "What's next for you?" I asked, stirring my latte. He shrugged, a rare smile breaking through. "Maybe a new practice, something smaller. Or maybe I'll take a year to travel. I haven't decided." His optimism was infectious, and I found myself smiling, too. "What about you, Claire? What's the big plan?" he asked. I leaned back, considering. "I'm building something real me business. My kid's future. My life. James paid for it, in a way, without even knowing." We both laughed, the sound carrying a shared understanding. Our spouses had thought they could outsmart us, but they'd underestimated our strength. One evening, as I worked late on a campaign, my phone buzzed with a text from James. "Can we talk? I miss the kids." I stared at the screen, weighing my response. He'd been granted supervised visits, but he'd barely shown up, too consumed by his own downfall. I typed back, "You can see them next weekend. As scheduled. Don't make promises you can't keep." His reply came quickly, "I'm trying. Claire. I'm sorry." I didn't respond. His apologies meant nothing now. The kids deserved better. And so did I. The next morning, I took Emma and Liam to the park, their laughter filling the air as they raced to the swings. I watched them, my heart swelling with a fierce love. This was my life now, messy, imperfect, but mine. The pain of James's betrayal still lingered, but it was fading, replaced by a quiet strength. As I pushed Liam on the swing, my phone buzzed again. It was a news alert. The Business Journal had published a follow-up, detailing the collapse of James's career. I skimmed it, then put my phone away. His downfall was no longer my concern. My focus was on the future in the business, the kids, and the woman I was becoming. The offshore account was the final piece, a secret victory I'd savor quietly. James had thought he'd secured his future, but instead, he'd funded mine. The morning sun filtered through my new office window, casting a warm glow over the sleek desk I'd bought from Monroe Creative. The space was small but vibrant, filled with sketches, color swatches, and the hum of creativity. Mia, my lead designer, was pitching a bold campaign for a tech startup, her enthusiasm contagious. I nodded, adding notes, feeling a surge of pride. This was my empire, built from the ashes of James's betrayal. My phone buzzed with a message from Richard. "Evelyn's selling her car to cover legal fees. She's a mess." I typed back, "Karma's thorough." I didn't gloat, but the irony wasn't lost on me. Evelyn and James had planned a glamorous escape, but now they were scrambling to survive. Meanwhile, I was thriving, and the offshore account now, safely in my name, was the key to my new life. The kids were my anchor. Emma, at 10, was starting to ask harder questions. Why doesn't Daddy live with us anymore? She asked one evening, her eyes searching mine. I sat her down, choosing honesty but softness. Your dad made some choices that hurt our family, but he still loves you. We're building a new kind of family now, just the three of us. She nodded, processing, then hugged me tightly. Liam, younger and less aware, just wanted to know if we could get a dog. I laughed, promising to think about it. I leaned on Lisa for support, her house a haven during the transition. She'd seen me at my lowest, crying over James's emails, and now she saw me rising. You're a badass, Claire, she said one night, pouring me tea. You took his mess and turned it into something beautiful. Her words stayed with me, a reminder that this wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. Monroe Creative was gaining traction. The viral nonprofit campaign had opened doors, and we landed a contract with a national brand. I hired 2 more designers and a project manager, expanding our team. The work was demanding, but it fueled me. Every logo, every campaign, was a step toward independence. The offshore accounts funds helped, covering new equipment and marketing without touching the kids' trust fund. James, meanwhile, was spiraling. He'd moved into a cramped apartment, his once lucrative client list gone. He showed up for one supervised visit with the kids, looking disheveled and defeated. Emma was polite but distant. Liam barely noticed the tension. I watched from across the room, my heart a mix of pity and resolve. He'd made his bed, and I wasn't responsible for his comfort anymore. Richard and I met less often, our mission largely complete, but we still checked in. He was exploring new ventures, his confidence returning. I'm thinking of opening a pro bono practice, he said over lunch. Help people who've been screwed over, like we were. I admired his vision, seeing echoes of my own desire to rebuild. You're going to be great at that, I said, meaning it. He asked about James. He's barely functioning, I admitted. The article and the divorce cleaned him out. Richard nodded, his eyes distant. Evelyn's the same. She's talking about moving away, starting over. We both knew starting over wasn't so simple, not after what they'd done. The Business Journal's follow-up article had sealed their fates. It didn't name them outright, but the details were unmistakable. James's former colleague shunned him, and Evelyn's real estate license was under review. Their affair, once a secret thrill, was now a public disgrace. I didn't need to see them suffer to feel whole, but I couldn't deny the justice of it. One evening, I found an old photo of James and me, taken early in our marriage. We were laughing, carefree, unaware of the cracks that would form. I didn't cry, but I let myself feel the loss not of James, but of the life I'd thought we'd have. Then I tucked the photo away, choosing to focus on the present. The kids and I were settling into our new routine. We'd moved back into the house, now redecorated with bright walls and new memories. I enrolled Emma in art classes, her sketches showing a talent I hadn't noticed before. Liam begged for soccer, and I signed him up, cheering at his first game. These moments, small but precious, were the foundation of our new life. The offshore account was my secret weapon. I used part of it to pay off the mortgage, securing the house for the kids. The rest went into Monroe Creative, funding a website overhaul and a national ad campaign. The business was projected to double its revenue by year's end, a testament to my team's hard work and my refusal to give up. Sarah called with an update. James had tried to contest the alimony, claiming financial hardship. She shut it down, citing his hidden account as proof of bad faith. He's got nothing left to fight with, she said, a smile in her voice. I thanked her, grateful for her tenacity. That night, I sat in my studio, sketching ideas for a new client. The house was quiet, the kids asleep. I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. James's betrayal had broken me, but it had also set me free. The money he'd hidden, thinking it would fund his new life, was now the cornerstone of mine. As I closed my sketchbook, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Claire. It's Evelyn. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over the delete button. What could she possibly have to say? I stared at Evelyn's text, my thumb frozen over the screen. The audacity of her reaching out after everything sparked a flicker of anger. But curiosity won out. I typed back, meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. at the cafe on Elm Street. Don't be late. I didn't know what she wanted, but I'd face her on my terms, not hers. The next morning, I arrived early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of the door. Evelyn walked in, her once polished appearance replaced by a haggard look, dark circles under her eyes. Her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She spotted me and hesitated, then sat down, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Claire, I owe you an apology, she began, her voice shaky. I never meant for this to destroy your life. I leaned back, arms crossed, letting her words hang. You didn't just destroy my life, I said evenly. You destroyed your own, too. So why are you here? She swallowed, tears welling. I've lost everything, my career, my friends, my marriage. James, he's not who I thought he was. Her voice cracked, but I felt no sympathy. You made choices. Evelyn, you both did. What do you want from me? I want to make things right, she said, her eyes pleading. I'm leaving town, starting over. I needed to say I'm sorry. I studied her, searching for sincerity. Maybe it was there. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, her apology couldn't undo the damage. You've said it, I replied. Now go. She nodded, stood, and left without another word. I watched her go, feeling a strange closure. She was no longer my problem. Back at Monroe Creative, the team was buzzing. Our national campaign had launched, and early feedback was glowing. Mia presented mock-ups for a new client, her designs bold and innovative. I felt a surge of pride not just in her, but in what we'd built. The business was my sanctuary, proof that I could rise above the wreckage of my marriage. The kids were thriving, too. Emma's art classes were unlocking a creative spark, her sketches filling a portfolio I kept on my desk. Liam's soccer team won their first game, and I cheered louder than anyone, my heart swelling as he waved from the field. These moments, small but vivid, were stitching our family back together. Richard called later, his voice upbeat. I'm officially divorced, he said. Evelyn signed the papers yesterday. I'm keeping the house, and she's moving to her sister's in another state. I congratulated him, sensing the weight lifted from his shoulders. What about you? He asked. How's the empire? Growing, I said, smiling. The offshore account was a game changer. James doesn't even know it's gone. Richard laughed, a sound of shared triumph. We'd both turned betrayal into opportunity, and it felt damn good. The offshore account was my trump card. After paying off the mortgage and investing in the business, I'd set aside a portion for a dream I'd buried long ago, travel. I wanted to take Emma and Liam to Europe, to show them the world beyond our small town. The idea felt like a promise to myself, a reminder that life was bigger than James's lies. James, meanwhile, was a ghost. He'd missed his last 2 visits with the kids, citing work issues. I didn't press him. The kids were better off without his inconsistency. Sarah warned me he might try to renegotiate the alimony again, but she was ready to counter any move he made. He's got no leverage, she said. You're untouchable now. Untouchable. The word resonated. I'd spent years feeling tethered to James, his charm, his ambition. Now, I was free, and the offshore account, his secret stash, was the ultimate irony. He'd thought it would buy his freedom with Evelyn, but it had bought mine instead. One evening, I sat with Lisa, sipping wine on her porch. The kids were inside, watching a movie, their laughter drifting out. You've changed, Lisa said, studying me. You're stronger, but softer, too. Like you found yourself again. I nodded, swirling my glass. I didn't just lose a marriage. I lost who I thought I was. But I'm building her back, piece by piece. Lisa squeezed my hand, her eyes shining. You're doing more than that. You're building a legacy. Her words hit deep. Monroe Creative wasn't just a business. It was a testament to my resilience. The kids weren't just surviving. They were thriving. And I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was a woman who'd taken her pain and turned it into power. As winter approached, I planned our first family trip a week in Paris, funded by the offshore account. I told Emma and Liam over dinner, their eyes lighting up at the thought of the Eiffel Tower and croissants. Can we bring Mia? Liam asked, his adoration for my designer clear. I laughed, promising to invite her next time. That night, I sat in my studio, sketching a logo for a new client. The house was quiet, the kids asleep, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. James's betrayal had been a storm, but I'd weathered it. The offshore account, the business, the kids' smiles, they were my victory. My phone buzzed. A text from Richard, found a new office space for my practice. Drinks to celebrate. I smiled, typing back, you're on. Our alliance had started in pain, but it was evolving into something else, friendship. Maybe. Or just mutual respect. Either way, I was grateful. As I set my phone down, I glanced at my sketch. It was bold, vibrant, like the life I was building. James had tried to break me, but instead, he'd set me free. Spring arrived, painting the town in soft greens and pinks. I stood in my office at Monroe Creative, watching the team finalize a campaign for a major retailer. The screens glowed with vibrant designs, and Mia's laughter echoed as she tweaked a font. This was my world now, a far cry from the sleepless nights spent poring over James's emails. The offshore account had been the final piece of my liberation. After securing the house and the kids' future, I'd used the rest to fund a scholarship program through Monroe Creative, supporting young designers from underserved communities. It was my way of giving back, of turning pain into purpose. The first recipient, a shy 19-year-old named Aisha, had started interning with us. Her talent, a quiet fire that reminded me of my own beginnings. Emma and Liam were my heart. Paris had been a dream, Emma sketching the Seine, Liam chasing pigeons in the Tuileries. We'd returned with memories that felt like armor against the past. Emma's art was now framed on our walls, and Liam's soccer trophy sat proudly on the mantel. They still saw James occasionally, but his visits were sporadic, his excuses thin. I filled the gaps with love, consistency, and a dog named Max, a scruffy mutt Liam had begged for. James was a shadow of his former self. The Business Journal's articles had stripped him of credibility, and his attempts to start over had fizzled. I heard through a mutual friend he'd taken a low-level sales job, a far cry from the executive suites he once commanded. I didn't wish him ill, but I didn't wish him well either. He was irrelevant to my story now. Evelyn had vanished, true to her word. Richard got a postcard from her sister's town, a brief note about starting fresh. He'd moved on, too, launching his pro bono practice with a small office downtown. We met for drinks to celebrate, clinking glasses in a cozy bar. To new beginnings, he said, his eyes bright. I echoed the toast, feeling the truth of it. Our alliance, born of betrayal, had become a friendship forged in resilience. Richard shared that he'd started dating, a cautious step into a new chapter. I wasn't there yet, but I was open to the idea, a shift I hadn't expected. You'll know when you're ready, he said, reading my thoughts. I nodded, grateful for his understanding. The offshore account's funds were gone, fully invested in the house, the kids, and the business. But its true value was in what it had bought, freedom. James had hidden that money to escape with Evelyn. But instead, It had anchored me to a life I loved. The irony was delicious, and I savored it quietly. One evening, I sat with Lisa on her porch, the kids playing with Max in the yard. "You did it, Claire," she said, her voice warm. "You turned his betrayal into your triumph." I smiled, watching Emma chase Liam, their laughter a melody. "It wasn't just me," I said. "You, Richard, Sarah, everyone helped me get here." Lisa shook her head. "No, this was you. You chose to fight, to rebuild. That's all you." Her words settled in my chest. A quiet truth. I'd been broken, but I'd pieced myself back together, stronger than before. As summer loomed, I planned another trip with the kids, this time to Italy for the pizza. Liam insisted. I laughed, already picturing us wandering cobblestone streets, free and unburdened. Monroe Creative would keep growing. The scholarship program would expand, and I'd keep building, one day at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from James. "Can I see the kids soon? I'm trying to be better." I considered it, then replied, "Call me tomorrow. We'll set something up." I wasn't forgiving him, but I'd let him try for Emma and Liam. Not for me. My life was no longer his to shape. I leaned back, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and pink. The pain of James's affair was a distant ache, overshadowed by the life I'd created. He'd thought he could break me, but instead, he'd funded my freedom without even knowing. That was my victory, and I wore it like a crown.